Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, we are at the end of the line for our NFL division previews. If you're curious our thoughts on any of the other divisions as we get ready for kickoff on Thursday night, we have everything broken down, like our thoughts on the teams, how we think they're going to perform this year. So go and check those out, whether it's in podcast or on YouTube. They're all there. But Tyson, we're moving into the NFC East, our division with our Philadelphia Eagles here.
Our division. I hate the fact that this is our division. It's a two-horse race that might be a no-horse race. Like, we don't know what we're getting from any of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something. And so we're going to give our overview on the NFC East here, go through each team before we close out the show with our closing thoughts. And Tyson, stop me if you've heard this before, but there hasn't been a repeat winner in the NFC East since 2001 or whatever it is.
Since whatever, like, I think George W. Bush's first term. I feel like that's right.
Right? It's like 2001? Yeah, it's got to be something like that, right? Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard.
Math and history is hard. That's why we're doing sports talk on podcasts. But so when we're talking about this team, Tyson, this is a noisy offseason for the Cowboys, as it always is, right? The contracts and this and that. On the other side, the Eagles are putting their head down and grinding. The Giants don't have any room to talk about anything. So the fact that it was quiet is honestly a good thing for them because they had no right to be talking. And then the Commanders, it was all exciting, right? New head coach, new owner, new quarterback. This to me is intriguing because this could be one of those NFC East divisions, one of those NFC East years where everything kind of shuffles around. And you're like, oh my God, how are the Giants winning this many games? How are the Commanders going worst to first, yada, yada. But I still think it's a two-horse race as we look at it.
Yeah, I think that you wouldn't be off base, like looking at this division going, I hated the way the Eagles ended the season. They're not making the playoffs. I hate all the noise coming out of Dallas and the infighting, it seems, between players and ownership. They're not making the playoffs, and then you're left with like Jaden Daniels in Washington. Or if you're into the Daniel Jones thing in New York, maybe them. This is just another year of like days of our NFC East. It's almost nonstop, and a lot of it comes out of two of these teams. I think that Philly and Dallas have a way of being loud, as you said. I know you said the Eagles have put their heads down and been grinding, but there's been a lot of stories that have come out about these Philadelphia Eagles over the last couple months.
So let's get into the Dallas Cowboys. And, you know, the news CeeDee Lamb was holding out, wanted his money, and he got paid. Okay, so Dak Prescott, you know, he got paid, and now we're waiting on the Micah Parsons thing. So it's just everybody's looking for money. Everybody's looking for money, yada, yada. So they jettisoned Zeke Elliott out of town last year. That was a disaster with Tony Pollard, and so they brought him back. I mean, have you seen him in camp, man? I mean, he looks like an old man running through, like, just through the grocery store. I mean, the guy looks beat up. So I have no clue how that's going to look. Just for me with the Cowboys, they're going to put up points with Dak and CeeDee. Like, they have a floor, and the floor is being a really good football team. I just have no clue what their ceiling is. Like, every single year, it seems like they should be in the NFC Championship game. And every single year, it seems like they do something to shoot themselves in the foot, and all of a sudden, they're out of the playoffs. I mean, last year, getting embarrassed the way they did by that young Green Bay Packers team was a complete indictment on that entire operation.
Well, to be fair, I think the Cowboys playing Green Bay is just always going to end like that. For some weird reason, no matter what, they will find each other in the playoffs, and Green Bay will take them behind the woodshed. I think one of the reasons that it's so hard to figure out the ceiling for the Cowboys is because for the last seemingly decade, the ceiling has been the floor. They've been the same thing. Like, we know what we're getting from this team year in and year out as we sit here in August and September. And then in January, you know, we look at the records and we go, well, maybe the Cowboys could win the Super Bowl. And then the same team from August or September shows up. Is Dak going to get over that hump this year? As Jerry Jones said in his press conference, at a certain point, if you haven't seen it, you just haven't seen it. And I think that's an asinine thing to say for about somebody like Dak Prescott. I think that Cowboys fans don't quite know how good they've had it with Dak. There's a lot of hatred for him. When Trey Lance comes over and turns the ball over 5 times and fumbles 2 more in a preseason game, and then Cooper Rush is your backup quarterback, Jerry, shut the fuck up. What are you talking about? Like, that is genuinely like hitting your head against the wall. And now you got Greeny on ESPN saying, well, the fit is Shedeur Sanders, the Cowboy. How are they getting Shedeur Sanders? How are they going to get their hands on the number 3 overall pick in the NFL draft? This is a front office that has been afraid to trade. They've been afraid to sign their guys when it's time to sign their guys, and it's shooting themselves in the foot. I actually like some of the pieces that Dallas has. I don't think Brandon Cooks is out to pasture. I think that he's a solid option there, and they got a bunch of young guys. But Brad, the real thing, I mean, first of all, DeRon Bland being out for 6 to 8 weeks is huge. I think that obviously he's not going to score 100 touchdowns again, but like the guy's a good football player, and so it helps to have those dudes on your defense. But Mike McCarthy wants to run the football. Rico Dowdle is going to be toting the rock a lot for this team, and people like Rico Dowdle a bunch, and I think that they like him in an ancillary role. There has never been a case of a running back that handled the ball as few times in college and as few times through their first 6 years or 5 years or whatever it is for him now in the NFL that has popped off. It just doesn't happen. Now, can Rico Dowdle be the first? Maybe. It's just that history is telling us, no, this team's not going to be able to run the football. And if this team can't run the football, they look an awful lot like they did last year. And how they looked last year was a disappointment to Cowboys fans, and that is what they're setting themselves up for again. And I do just have to say his name because you didn't do it. Jake Ferguson can play.
Oh, Jake Ferguson's a really good player. Tyson, I think the biggest thing for me here is what does this defense look like with Mike Zimmer taking over after Dan Quinn left? We know they're going to try to blitz. We know they have some sort of aggression that stems from that. But Dan Quinn is a damn good defensive mind and a damn good coordinator. The way he did with his defense when he took over, just immediately turning into an aggressive turnover-prone or turnover-making defense was impressive. And so Mike Zimmer, listen, he cut his teeth as a defensive guy. So now that he's no longer the head coach and he just gets to focus on defense, does that improve the units that he's running? Sure. But Dan Quinn's been in the NFL coaching and working. And for him to be gone, I just don't know how this defense is going to look. That's my biggest question mark. Because I think the offense is still going to be good under Mike McCarthy. I don't know if it's going to be as prolific as it was last season with more tape on Dak. I think the offensive line has a few more questions. My thing is this defense, it could be a slow starting unit. And if that's the case, especially with Bland out, I mean, do they shoot themselves in the foot too early?
And they still have blue chippers. So let's hope that those guys, for Dallas' sake, can right the ship until the defense is fully healthy and all of those things. I really struggle with putting this team, what is a successful season for the Dallas Cowboys, because it's not winning a Super Bowl. I know that that's the ultimate goal for everybody, and it sounds silly saying that's not the true mark of success here, but at a certain point you got to play in an NFC Championship game, right? You got to show up to one of those things in order to go to the Super Bowl. So we can't keep sitting here and going, well, they're just going to bypass all the steps. It feels like every year, we're doing it again. Dallas is starting the season on second base, and they're going to finish on third, and we're all going to wonder why they never got home.
All right, let's get into our team, the Philadelphia Eagles. I just think it's funny, and if you're a consumer of the NFL, you probably heard the same thing. Well, I just think the Eagles are going to have a tough time this year because they collapsed last season. Guys, it doesn't carry over from year to year. People go home, they go to vacations, and they get away from the locker room that may have gotten dysfunctional, and they come back to their job and they're ready to work. Have you ever gone to Christmas break and you're driving your coworkers crazy, they're driving you crazy, and then you come back from Christmas break and you're like, oh my God, it's great to be back and see the guys. That's how it is here. What happened the previous year is not necessarily going to carry over. And the fact that people are just like, well, I just can't trust the Eagles because of what happened last year when they collapsed. Well, just throw that out here. Let's look at what this football team is. I think they have the best quarterback in the division. I know Cowboys fans will push back with the Dak thing. I think Jalen Hurts is better. Okay, if you want to come after me for that, that's just my opinion. You can have yours. They have the best overall skill position group after getting Saquon Barkley. They have the best wide receiver group. They have the best running back room. Okay. They have the best offensive line. I don't care. I heard the Jason Kelsey thing is a huge issue. I don't think so when you insert Sham Jurgens, who was intentionally drafted by the organization and handpicked by Jason Kelsey to be a successor with him taking over. And then you bring in Vic Fangio on defense, who is a light years ahead of anything that was run last year by Matt Patricia or Sean Desai. And you upgraded your biggest weaknesses, the secondary. Let's just draft a ton of young guys. Let's get younger. I am having a hard time punching some holes in this. Now, again, I'm an Eagles fan, so I'm looking at it through Green lens glasses, let's just say. But if I'm just stepping back and looking objectively, they have the best units in this entire division. Like, where am I wrong here?
Well, I think you cut a little bit of a promo tape, so I'll take the other side of this. I think that it won't carry over to the extent that it was last year. There was some severe stink on this Philadelphia Eagles season. It was evident early on. I think after they beat the Dolphins in week 3, it was kind of like, okay. And then week 4 and 5 and 6 happened. It's like, how does this team keep winning games? And then all of a sudden, the bottom fell out, and it was a disaster. It's not necessarily true that it's going to carry over, but with the reports of Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni not speaking to each other and some of the other things, like how does that play in the locker room? And again, I'm taking the negative side here on Brad, but what if Jalen Hurts can't read at the line of scrimmage and Jason Kelce was that impactful to him? The flip side to that argument is well, Jalen's never had to do it. Maybe this is going to unlock something and he's going to be able to do more kind of when Jalen gets off script, he's really, really good. It's just that when the script is 4 verticals every play, it's really hard for him. I think that one thing that you could say about last year's Philadelphia Eagles is they had the best receiving group then. And on paper, they might have had the best running back room in the division outside of New York because Saquon is Saquon. But they had the best offensive line. They had the best defensive line. The corners and linebackers are always going to be an issue in Philadelphia. Let's see if the corners are better now that you get Quinton Mitchell in the building. You bring in Isaiah Rodgers, who missed a year last year for gambling suspension. Some of these guys that can fill holes. But the bottom can absolutely still fall out of this thing. And I would point to the pass rush and that defensive line as to why I'm hesitant on the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's not for the players that they have. The organizational philosophy when it comes to defensive line is let's rotate as many of these really good players in as we can. Let's keep them fresh. Let's keep them going. And then you bring in Vic Fangio, who says, I don't want to do any of that shit. I want my best players on the field at all times. I want Jordan Davis to be able to play 600 snaps. I need Jalen Carter out here for 800 or 700 snaps. I want Milton Williams rotating in, but that's all I want. I don't want your Marlon Tupelodu or whoever it is. I think Marlon just got cut, actually, but the point still stands. I think they have a lot of really weird fits on the edge. Is Josh Sweat cooked? That's a real conversation. He looked like the best player on the team through 5 weeks last year, and then he came crashing down with the rest of the team. What if Bryce Huff can only play in situational spots, and he's not ready to take on a 70% snap share? What if the loss of Hassan Reddick is bigger than we think? What if Nolan Smith can't play? What if the linebackers are still bad? I mean, we're looking at it as upgrades at all of these places, but to go from Zach Cunningham to Zach Bond, is that really that crazy on the linebacker side of things? Or if Jeremiah Charter Jr. is actually too little? So those are the things that I would say to the people who are saying the Philadelphia Eagles are not going to be good. I think that all of those would be valid reasons.
I mean, I just think it's a nitpick because this team's been good, so people are trying to poke a hole in it. The floor is high, man. If you have an elite roster like the Eagles do, you're not going to lose a lot of games you should. Now, of course, when you look at last year, like people are doing, we would have said the same thing. I mean, I'm interested to see the additions. I mean, you bring in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You kind of need that asshole in the locker room, right? Where he's constantly and sometimes it's too much where you're walking on eggshells and this dude can just blow up. But when you're struggling and you're reeling, you kind of want that dude who's going to be I'll get in your face and get after you. Now, that's inside baseball because we're Eagles fans. I just think on the surface, there are enough changes from last year to this that I can look at and say, no, that's going to be where they improve. Kellen Moore is a better offensive coordinator than Brian Johnson. Check. Vic Fangio is a better defensive coordinator than the 2 guys they had last year. Check. This running back room is stronger with Saquon Barkley. Check. The only question mark I have is the offensive line, which you laid out. Without Kelce, we know the blocking ability. We don't know, we can't really quantify the leadership. We can't quantify the pre-snap stuff, whatever the case may be. But when I look at everything else, it's an upgrade. Jahan Dotson in the slot. I mean, it's crazy. It's a room of riches now. I mean, it's crazy. And so I think people are looking at the Eagles team the last year proved that they're not very good. I think it's misguided, but that's me coming in here.
Yeah, and I think this is really tough spot for the Philadelphia Eagles to be in. This is Jalen Hurts' 8th offensive coordinator in his last 7 seasons. The only time he had 2 in a row was the Shane Steichen years. The 2022 Eagles offense was shitting on everybody all the way to the Super Bowl, and then the second half of the Super Bowl fell apart. Is this going to be a similar style? Maybe Jalen could pick it up. This is one thing that I think, and I'm going to cut a little bit of a promo tape here. Jalen Hurts is the preeminent winner in the NFL, and it's him and Joe Burrow to me. I know Pat Mahomes lives in a different zip code than all of these guys. He doesn't factor into these conversations for me. I know he's the best. Jalen Hurts has been that guy since the day he stepped on campus at Alabama. He's shown he's resilient. He's come back after being benched for Tua. Nobody talks about the fact he comes in at halftime of the SEC championship game and beats Georgia, so Alabama can go to another national championship. That kind of gets swept under the rug. So I think the dude is a certified stud, and I think that you can look at it and say, well, the NFL figured him out. They're running 6 plays last year. Like, we were all looking at the screen going, oh, this is a wide receiver screen with Devontae Smith as lead blocker. That's not going to work. Oh, it's quarterback draw. That's not going to work. And then we're going 40-yard deep ball to A.J. Brown. And sometimes A.J. Brown can make you look really smart. And he did that for 12 weeks last season. And then things kind of got keyed in on, if this team can't play against the blitz, that's a huge problem. And that was the biggest issue last year. And we're going to find out if that was a Jalen Hurts or a Brian Johnson thing. Maybe it's a Nick Sirianni thing.
New York Giants. It's the same song and dance. The Giants are believing. Daniel Jones looks good. Oh, it's preseason. Look at the throws he's making. This is unbelievable. And he gets into a real game and he crumbles. And that's the story about the Giants, Tyson. It's the same song and dance every single year with this team. I have real question marks about Brian Daboll as a leader. I know he's a really good offensive mind. I mean, the guy was having freaking mini heart attacks on the sideline because there was a simple mistake. He just I just can't I can't even think right now. I'm so angry. I'm like, dude, you got another half of football left. You got to compose yourself and get in there and make adjustments to win these games. Now, if he has a healthy quarterback who's performing at a high level, it's going to work like when he had Josh Allen. Now, is he a guy that can elevate someone who's average or below average like Daniel Jones? Hasn't seemed that way so far. Now, I will point out they did make the playoffs in the first season there, and it looked fine. And then last year it crumbled. I am not confident in the operation that the New York Giants are running. I think the Hard Knocks thing was a disaster for their new regime, and it just pointed a picture like this front office has no clue what they're doing. This organization has no clue what they're doing, and it's just no wonder why they continue to get lapped by the smarter organizations in the league.
Yeah, I don't think Joe Sheen came off all that well in the Hard Knocks, but again, maybe we're looking at this with Eagles-colored glasses. If I was going to take the devil's advocate approach again, I would say that Daniel Jones was able to elevate guys like Isaiah Hodgins and whoever else it was in that 2022 season, just some really, really poor skill position players. It's really hard to look at that and then go, well, now they have Malik Neighbors, who is a rookie coming in here, and essentially I think there's a real chance Malik Neighbors leads the NFL in targets. Not catches, not yards, but I think he might be pushing 170, 175 of these things. Who else are they throwing the football? You're not messing around with Jalen Hyatt. I don't think that that's a very hot take. We don't know who's playing tight end on a week-to-week basis. We can guess, but we don't know how effective they're going to be. You bring in Devin Singletary, but kind of the vibe, at least through the HBO show that we watched, was how much these guys like Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy's played running back for a year. I can go back and say the same stuff I just said about Rico Dowdle, about Tyrone Tracy. It just doesn't happen, people. And so I think that they're going to struggle to run the football. I think that they're going to struggle to throw the football. I think that Neighbors is going to have spots this season where you look at him and you go, wow, I see it. I see why they were so high on this guy, why they liked him more than Marvin Harrison Jr., all of these things. There's also going to be moments where it's like, man, why did Malik take his helmet off and chuck it at the defensive back and now he's out of the game? And that's a real concern that I think that this Giants team has to have. They've been undisciplined for the last couple of years. They lose some pretty huge pieces on that defense. And they got whooped in free agency. I don't think there's really two ways about it. They didn't retain the homegrown talent. Xavier McKinney, I mean, that's a guy that cannot get out the door if you're trying to build things. And I understand you don't pay safeties. You don't have a choice. You are not the Philadelphia Eagles. You are not the Kansas City Chiefs. You are not the Cincinnati Bengals or the Buffalo Bills or whoever it is. You have to pay who is willing to play for you because your team stinks. And when you keep putting them in a position to stink, Brad, we're talking about a team that was too afraid to make a move to go up and get a quarterback this year. was too stupid or too, scared to lose the guy they had 2 years ago. So they gave him $40 million a year. And now we're walking into a 2025 quarterback class where you're trying to talk yourself into Carson Beck. Like maybe he's Jared Goff. You're trying to talk yourself into Quinn Ewers. We don't know what we're getting from him. He's a little light in the ass. Is he going to be able to last in the NFL? Is Shedeur Sanders going to survive in the New York media market, or is that whole thing going to explode? There's more. If you were going to upgrade quarterback, last year was the year to do it. You're sitting there with the number 6 overall pick. You have a ton of money, and you have a bunch of future assets. You chose to use those future assets and that money on Brian Burns, and that's fine. And Brian Burns is a good player. Brian Burns raises your ceiling by a game or two.
That's what I was going to ask you after this. I mean, they're super excited to have Brian Burns. He's a good player. And you got to get, and like you said, you got to get talent into your organization. And we talked about this for the Bears. I mean, when they made the trade to get Montez Sweat and everybody's like trying to rip him, it's like, you just got to get talent, man. Like the Bears are so bad.
But that's a third. Like we're talking a couple first here.
We're talking, and the pay him when you are paying Daniel Jones. It's just another one of my examples that this organization is in way over their head. Are desperate, but without trying to be too desperate, without trying to admit that they're
cool,
desperate.
Man. That's the thing.
Right.
They want to be cool. We're the Giants. You want to come play. Nobody wants to play for either one of these New York teams, and they're the only ones that don't know it.
So the thing that's going to be success, that's going to drive success the most, is the same thing that we've been talking about with the Giants for it feels like the past decade. What does this offensive line do? You bring in John Runyon, you bring in Drain Illuminar, Austin Schlottman. These are the guys you brought in this offseason. Is that like – I mean, come on. Are these the guys that you're looking at? We have a bad offensive line. These are the guys who are going to make up for it. Or these are the guys who are going to fill in, and all of a sudden we're going to be good, and we can compete. We can compete with the Eagles front. We can compete with the Cowboys front. No, I just – the lack of them trying to be aggressively fixing their offensive line continues to baffle me, Tyson. And I think – again, there's a real chance this offensive line crumbles because it's just, we're really sad that Evan Neal is not getting on the field. Like, you should be happy the guy can't play in the NFL.
Stinks. Well, it's a similar thing that we talked about, like with the Bears and with the Panthers and some of the other teams. And we sound like haters if you are a Giants fan or you're a Bears fan or you're a Panthers fan. But it's important sometimes in your fandom to get reality checked. These are really good additions for you. There's a reason that they are signing with you.
Okay, let's get into the Washington Commanders. And, on the flip side of us kind of destroying the Cowboys and destroying the Giants, this is a new era in Washington. I think you've got to be super excited if you're a Washington Commanders fan. You get the quarterback in Jalen Daniels. And, speaking of light in the ass, I mean, you got to hope that he can stay upright, avoid hits. He's super athletic and can run around and has a good arm. But, man, you're just holding your breath if he gets hit. But you are led by Dan Quinn. An adult, a grown-up, a guy who I think is a little bit more in tune with what's going on defensively than Ron Rivera. I think that's fair to say, just based on how good his defense has looked with the Dallas Cowboys. And let's face it, I mean, Josh Harris, I may have some criticisms, but since I'm a 76ers fan, I think the guy kind of has his head up his ass sometimes.
How is this not conflict of interest, dude?
Oh, dude, it's got to be. It's insane. I don't know how that is, but I mean, anything's better than Dan Snyder if you're a Commanders fan. So you'll take head up your ass compared to whatever the hell Daniel Snyder was.
It was just ass in your face, I think.
There you go. I was looking for something.
It's just shoving it. This is the most important thing to me on the Washington Commanders, and it's going to be the most important thing to me over the course of the season and probably over the course of the next 4 years. Because Jaden Daniels has a pressure-to-sack ratio of 24.5%. That's a full point higher than Justin Fields, who we all sit here and go, this dude can't feel pressure at all. That's 2.5 points higher than Zach Wilson. And this is all coming out of college, by the way. But that's 2.5 points higher than Zach Wilson. It's 2.5 points higher than Joe Burrow, who's been hurt every season that he's been in the NFL, save one. That one was magical, but it's still true. It's really concerning that this dude might just get himself killed. Just running around trying to make plays, and that's part of the reason you love him. If you're a Washington Commanders fan, if you're an LSU Tiger fan, if you're a fan of football, this dude is just absolutely electric. He can do things, that very few in the world can do. He can't afford to take hits. I mean, you go back to that Alabama game with LSU a year ago. They're down 14 points. He's trying to put Brian Thomas Jr. in a position to make a play, and he gets hit right under the chin strap, is concussed, and they lose the football game. when they were driving to go down one score. Anything can happen at that point, but he needs to learn, I don't have to do everything. I don't know if Washington has the pieces for him to be able to say, hey, I just turn it around and hand it to, whoever, Brian Robinson Jr., I can throw it to the ghost of Austin Eckler. I said Malik Neighbors might lead the league in targets. It might be Terry. Terry McLaurin is going to get double teamed as soon as he gets off the bus. This dude is going to have to breathe. I think the defense is going to be fine. Like I know that last year the defense was kind of much maligned, but like Eric Bieniemy was just throwing that thing 100 times a game. They were never put in a position to win. And then Ron Rivera is Ron Rivera, but Dan Quinn, I think you and I can both agree is a different caliber of coach at this point in their careers. And I think he's a floor raiser for that defense. What does success look like for the Washington Commanders this season?
I think you throw out record. I think Cliff Kingsbury looks like he puts together a good offense for Daniels, and Daniels looks like he belongs. I mean, that's the reality. I agree with you. This defense is going to be good. The regime change. You want to talk about Adam Peters, their new executive? Let's just say he's not messing around. Like he turned this thing over quick, and that's what I like to see. Like I'm in charge. That we're not holding on to anything. Let's go and cut, and let's already have a plan. Like. He's like, okay, we're going to work with Dan Quinn on what he wants to bring in. This guy's been in coaching. I want these guys. I like these guys. Here's who's available. I mean, Frankie Louvu, good player in the past. Bobby Wagner, a potential future Hall of Famer, long in the tooth now, but a leader, and you need that on this team. Clelin Ferrell, a bust, but, a guy who can play at some sort of role in this team.
He's only a bust because Mike Mayock drafted him fourth. He's an NFL player. He doesn't
That's a good point.
Higher than he should have.
Austin Eckler on offense, Jamison Crowder, Zach Ertz, so they're bringing in guys that have experience in the league, and they cut the ties with the previous regime's players, and they're moving this thing quick. So Tyson, to me, that's why I don't look at, they got to win 7 games to be set. Like, can Jalen Daniels play? Does Dan Quinn have this defense flying around? And does Cliff Kingsbury look like he's calling a competent game, or are we still going to look at this Commanders team like, man, this operation's a mess?
And you heard Cliff Kingsbury and you heard Zach Ertz, and that means that your 2025 best tight end in the NFL will be Ben Sinnott. He did it to Dallas Goedert. He did it to Trey McBride, and goddamn it, he's doing it to Ben Sinnott too.
All right, let's give some closing thoughts here on the NFC East power rankings. Philadelphia Eagles are going to win this division, guys. They're the best team. They're the most complete. They have the best quarterback. Listen, I know the Sirianni thing is holding people back. The guy is the winningest head coach in this franchise's history in the first 3 seasons. He's 2 years removed from the Super Bowl, for God's sake.
Through 3 seasons, I believe.
There we go. So, I mean, let's kind of pump the brakes on the criticism here. Maybe you don't think he's all in charge. I mean, somebody's got to be the head coach mantle, and that's what he is. So I think they're the best team. Cowboys, listen, the floor's too high. They're still going to be good. Dak Prescott's there. Mike McCarthy, for all the warts, he is good at calling offense. I think the defense can take a step back, but there's just too many good players on this defense to be horrible. I'm going to go Commanders take the leap over the Giants. I think Commanders are the third best team just based on vibes, based on them coming into this thing with a new mentality and a new attitude. And I just am not buying into the Giants. If they surprise me, okay, they surprise me. But I'm just not going to be stuck with egg on my face believing this team can take a step.
Yeah, I think the Giants are the worst team in the division. And I haven't fully formed this idea yet. I know we're running out of time. The season starts in 2 days. But maybe one of the Cowboys or Eagles isn't going to make the playoffs. And maybe Washington jumps all the way up to number 2. And I'm sitting here right now and kind of working through it in my brain. If I'm Dak Prescott and I haven't been paid and I get a little ankle injury and I'm not suiting up for you in week 6. I don't care. Like, trot Trey Lance out there. You want to do that? Then you'll pay me for sure. Let's just see. I mean, you talk about vibes. I think vibes are really, really low in Dallas right now based on kind of what we're hearing. It'd be just fine if you just stop letting Jerry Jones go to press conferences. Like, none of this stuff would have leaked, and we'd all be sitting here with, a different view on Dallas. I would go Philly 1, Dallas 2, Washington 3, New York 4. But I think there's a real chance that either Philadelphia or Dallas explodes or implodes at some point this season, and Washington can kind of step into that 2 role. This is a one playoff team division.
Ooh, all right. Well, there we go. A little spicy take from Tyson on the way out. Let's close it here. Like, subscribe, and share. we are done with our division previews. That means we are right into the season now. We got a ton of content coming out for you guys, so make sure you stay subscribed. Smash that like button on the way out. Like, Tyson and I are super excited for the season. So we're going to have some new stuff. We're going to be, I think, delivering the best content we've delivered to you guys. So we're hoping to build this thing. We appreciate you guys staying connected with us. And, we got college football coming again later this week for week 2. We'll talk to you guys then. Peace.